The river was wild that day, its water dark and heavy, rushing like it wanted to swallow everything that came close. The human stood on the bank, just watching the strange alien landscape. He had traveled far and seen many things, but this place felt alive in a dangerous way. The air smelled sharp, like metal after rain, and the sound of the river roared louder than thunder. He was about to turn away when he heard something. A cry, high and broken, carried by the wind. At first, he thought it was only the strange sounds of the forest. But then it came again, sharper this time, filled with panic. His heart tightened. He moved closer, his boots sinking into the muddy ground, and then he saw her. A woman, not human, but alien, her skin faintly glowing under the dim light, was thrashing in the water. The current pulled her down again and again. She reached for the surface, but the river swallowed her arms and face, dragging her under like a monster that would not let go. Without thinking, he ran. His brain screamed that it was stupid. He did not know these people. He did not know their rules, and the river itself was not his enemy to fight. But his heart didn't care. Someone was dying, and he could not just watch. He dropped his pack, pulled off his heavy jacket, and dived into the icy water. The shock hit him like knives stabbing all over his body. The cold stole his breath, but he forced himself to kick and push. The current was stronger than he had imagined. It pulled at his legs, tried to twist him around, but he kept his eyes on her. Her body slipped under the surface, her hair floating like dark weeds in the water. He pushed harder, arms burning, chest screaming for air. At last, he grabbed her arm. She was limp now, her fight almost gone. With a grunt, he pulled her close and turned her face upward. Her lips were pale, her eyes half closed. She looked fragile, even though her people were known for their strength. He wrapped his arm tight around her chest and kicked for the shore. Every movement felt heavier, as if the river wanted to keep its prize. His lungs felt like they would burst. His muscles begged him to let go, but he refused. "Not today," he muttered, his teeth clenched. He fought the water, pulling her inch by inch closer to safety. Finally, his feet found the riverbed. He staggered forward, waves crashing against his back, until at last they fell onto the muddy bank. He coughed hard, rolling her gently onto the ground. Water poured from his mouth, but he ignored his own pain. She was still. Her chest did not move. Panic gripped him. He had pulled her from the water only to lose her here. Quickly, he placed his hands on her chest and pressed once, twice, 3 times. He breathed into her lungs, praying she would respond. For long seconds, nothing happened. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then she gasped, choking up water, her body jerking as life returned. Relief washed over him so strongly that he almost collapsed beside her. Her glowing skin flickered, her eyes opening just enough to meet his. In that single moment, he saw fear, confusion, and something else, something softer. But before he could say anything, he realized they were not alone. Figures were standing in the trees, watching. A whole group of aliens, tall and proud, their strange armor reflecting the light. Their faces were unreadable, but their eyes burned with something he could not name. They had seen everything. He stood slowly, breathing hard, water dripping from his clothes. The woman still lay beside him, coughing weakly. No one from her clan had moved to help her, not even when she was drowning. Now they looked at him as if he had broken some wall that should never have been touched. He frowned, anger rising in his chest. She was drowning, he said aloud, though he knew they might not understand his language. She would have died. His voice was raw, half from shouting inside the river, half from frustration. The aliens remained silent, only their glowing eyes fixed on him. Finally, one elder-looking man stepped forward, his expression stern. He looked down at the woman, then at the human, and spoke words that sounded heavy, like stone rolling across the earth. The human could not understand the language, but the way the others bowed their heads told him it was important. The woman stirred, lifting her hand weakly. She touched the human's wrist, her fingers trembling, and whispered in broken human words, "Now, you own me." The words struck him like lightning. He froze, staring at her pale face, her lips forming those strange words again. Own her? What did that mean? He had only tried to save her, nothing more. He looked around, but every alien eye was fixed on him, watching, waiting. He realized, in that instant, that he had stepped into something far larger than he understood. Saving her life was no longer just an act of mercy. It was the beginning of something dangerous, something binding. The river had not only tried to drown her, it had pulled him into her world, into her fate. The human's heart pounded in his chest. He had saved her, yes, but now the real question began. What price would he pay for this rescue? And why did her voice, weak and broken as it was, sound less like a warning and more like a promise? The human stood there, still wet from the river, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. The alien woman was alive, coughing softly on the ground beside him. Relief filled his heart, but before he could feel safe, the strange silence of the crowd pressed on him. Dozens of alien eyes burned into him, some cold, some sharp with suspicion. He expected them to thank him, maybe even rush forward to help her, but no one moved. Instead, the elder who had spoken before took another step closer. His long robe, marked with glowing patterns, dragged across the mud. His voice was deep and slow, each word falling like a stone into the stillness. The human could not understand, but he felt the weight of judgment. Two younger aliens translated with sharp gestures, pointing at him, pointing at the woman, then making a binding motion with their hands, like a chain being locked. He frowned, confused. He wanted to ask what they meant, but the woman spoke first. Her voice was weak, but her words cut through the air. By sacred law, you saved me. Now, I belong to you. The human froze. The words made no sense. He blinked at her, water still dripping from his hair, and shook his head. No, that's not how it works, he said quickly. He tried to smile nervously. I just pulled you out. That's all. No one belongs to anyone. But her people did not share his relief. A murmur rippled through the crowd like the low growl of a beast. The elder raised a hand, silencing them. His eyes were dark, serious, unblinking. He said more words in their language, slow and deliberate, and this time even the human could hear the final part. Sacred law. The woman, still trembling, looked up at him again. You don't understand. In our clan, in all clans, if life is saved, it is not free. The savior takes the life. It is gift and chain. The human felt his stomach twist. Chain? He repeated. He glanced at the faces staring at him, warriors, women, even children. None of them looked angry now. Instead, they looked at him with expectation, as if he had already chosen, as if the law itself had spoken. He stepped back, holding up his hands. No, that's not my way. I don't want a chain. I don't want her to belong to me. His voice cracked with desperation, but the words only seemed to disturb the crowd more. One of the warriors suddenly barked something, his tone filled with challenge. He pointed at the human, then at the woman, and finally struck his fist against his chest. His meaning was clear without translation. You cannot refuse. If you do, you insult the law. You insult us. The human's heart pounded. He could feel the tension like a blade against his throat. These people didn't see his act as kindness. They saw it as a sacred contract. Breaking it meant breaking their honor, their entire way of life. He looked down at the woman again, searching her face for help, but her eyes were full of sorrow. If you say no, she whispered softly, they will kill you. You cannot walk away. The words made his blood run cold. He thought saving her life would be the end, but now it felt like it was only the beginning. He looked around at the sharp spears, the strong warriors, and the elder who stood like stone. He realized there was no escape. Either he accepted, or he would be treated as an enemy of their people. He rubbed his face, trying to think, trying to find another way. But I don't even know her, he said out loud, though more to himself than anyone else. His voice trembled. I just wanted to help. The elder spoke again, his tone heavy with finality. One of the younger aliens, struggling with human words, translated clumsily, help is not free. You touch the life, you hold it. You take her now. By sacred law, she is yours. The human felt anger rise inside him, hot and sharp. He had not asked for this. He had not planned for it. But even in his frustration, he could not ignore the fragile figure at his side. She had almost died, and now she stared at him with eyes full of fear, not of him, but of her own people. For her, this law was real, unavoidable, like the river itself. He clenched his fists, torn between refusal and survival. The warriors watched his every move, ready to strike if he defied them. He could feel their hostility, like sparks waiting to become fire. The woman's trembling hand touched his arm again. If you reject me, you reject them. You die. Please, don't. Her voice was broken, pleading. Something in him shifted. He had always lived by choice, by freedom. Now freedom was the one thing he could not have. He stared into her glowing eyes and saw the weight she carried. She was not celebrating this law. She was trapped in it, just like him. For the first time since dragging her from the river, he spoke with quiet strength. I don't want to own anyone, but if this is the only way to live, then I accept. Not because of your law, but because I will not let you suffer for what I did. The elder nodded, his expression unchanged, as if he had known this choice was inevitable. The crowd released the breath they had been holding. The warriors lowered their hands, though their eyes still burned with suspicion. The woman's shoulders sagged with relief, and she whispered something so faint he almost missed it. Thank you. But the human knew this was not thanks. This was surrender to a bond he barely understood. Sacred law had wrapped around him like invisible chains, and now there was no going back. He had saved her from drowning in the river, but perhaps he had only thrown himself into deeper waters. He felt the ground beneath his boots heavy, as if the earth itself had claimed him. He looked at the woman beside him and knew one thing. His life was no longer his own. It was tied to hers now, bound by words older than time, by a law he had never agreed to follow. And somewhere deep inside, a shadow of fear whispered to him, what else would this law demand before the end? The human had barely accepted the strange law when he felt the air around him change. The crowd no longer stood in silence. Whispers spread like fire in dry grass. The warriors shifted uneasily, their hands brushing the hilts of their blades, their eyes sharp with anger. He could not understand their words, but he could feel their meaning, disapproval, rage, disbelief. The alien woman sat weakly beside him, her hair still dripping, her glowing skin pale. She lowered her gaze, as if she knew what would come next. The human glanced at her, then at the crowd. He had been in many dangerous places before, but never had he felt so outnumbered, so trapped. One of the warriors finally stepped forward. He was tall, broader than the others, his armor decorated with scars of battle. He pointed directly at the human, then at the woman, and spat words full of venom. Even without translation, the message was clear. This outsider had no right. Another warrior joined in, shouting louder, his voice cutting through the night air. He jabbed his finger toward the human again and again. The crowd responded with murmurs of agreement. They were not happy. To them, a stranger taking one of their sacred women was an insult, a stain on their honor. The human raised his hands in protest. I didn't choose this, he tried to explain, though he knew they could not understand his words. I only saved her, that's all. His voice sounded weak even to his own ears. The woman finally spoke, her voice trembling but clear. She tried to calm her people, saying something in their language. For a moment, the crowd listened, but then the largest warrior barked back at her, his tone sharp, almost threatening. She flinched, her body shrinking closer to the human, as if his presence alone was her shield. The human felt something rise inside him, anger. He stepped forward, placing himself between her and the warrior. His voice was low but firm. Don't. Even if they did not know his words, they could feel his tone, his stance. The warriors hissed like wolves, their hands tightening around weapons. The elder raised his hand again, trying to quiet them, but their fury was too strong. The law might have spoken, but their pride screamed louder. The human's chest tightened. He could see it now. This was not going to end with words. To them, he was an intruder who had broken into their sacred traditions. They could not allow a stranger to take such a place of honor. He could see the hatred in their eyes, and hatred often led to blood. That night, as the clan moved him and the woman into a hut at the edge of the camp, he felt their stares burning into his back. They gave him food, but no one touched it before handing it to him, as if afraid his touch would poison them. They spoke to each other in low, harsh voices, always glancing at him. The woman sat silently across from him, her head bowed. Finally, she lifted her eyes, and in her broken human tongue, she whispered, "They do not want you. They want me back. You took me by law, but they think you are unworthy." He swallowed hard. "Unworthy?" She nodded slowly. "You are not of our blood, not of our clan. To them, it is shame." Her voice shook as she continued, "They cannot break the law, so they want you to break it yourself." The human frowned, confusion in his eyes. "What happens if I refuse this bond?" The woman's face darkened, her lips trembling as she whispered, "If you refuse me, they will kill you." Her words hit him like ice. He leaned back, staring at the flickering fire in the corner of the hut. His mind raced. He had walked into this thinking he had saved a life. Now he realized he had also stepped into a storm that could destroy his own. She reached across the fire, her hand brushing his sleeve lightly. Her touch was hesitant, almost afraid. "I am sorry," she whispered. "This is not what I wanted, but the law is older than all of us, older than my clan, older than me." He met her gaze, seeing the sorrow in her eyes. She was just as trapped as he was, maybe more. She had grown up under this law, knowing its chains. For him, it was new and confusing, but for her, it was a cage she had always lived in. Outside, the sounds of the clan grew louder. Warriors spoke in heated tones. Somewhere, a child cried, hushed quickly by its mother. The entire camp seemed alive with unrest. He knew they were talking about him, planning, deciding. The woman's voice broke the silence again. "One will challenge you. Soon. They will not wait. They will test if you are strong enough to keep me. If you win, they must accept you. If you lose..." She did not finish. Her silence said enough. The human closed his eyes, feeling the weight of what was coming. He had no armor, no weapons like theirs. He had only his fists, his wits, and his will to survive. And yet, deep inside, he felt a spark. He had faced danger before. He had been outnumbered, outmatched, but never broken. He opened his eyes and looked at her again. She was watching him, her face pale, her lips pressed tight. She feared for him, but beneath her fear, there was something else. Hope, a fragile hope that maybe, somehow, he could stand against them. He gave her a small nod, more to reassure her than himself. "Then let them test me," he said quietly. "I didn't come here to fight, but I won't run." The woman lowered her gaze again, her hands twisting in her lap. "Be careful," she whispered. "They will not fight fair." That night, as the fire crackled low and the camp settled into uneasy silence, the human lay awake. Every shadow outside the hut felt like a threat, every sound like a warning. The woman slept lightly, her breaths uneven, as if even in dreams she carried fear. He stared into the darkness, knowing the truth. He had stepped into their world, and now their world would decide if he could stay. The challenge was coming. He could feel it. The question was not whether they would test him, but whether he would survive. The morning came with a heavy silence, as if the whole clan was waiting for something. The human woke up to the sound of drums. They were slow, deep beats that echoed through the camp like a heartbeat. He sat up, his body stiff from the cold floor, and saw the alien woman already awake. She was sitting quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale. "They call for ceremony," she said softly in her broken human tongue. "Today, you must stand before all." The human's chest tightened. He had known this was coming. From the moment she whispered about the challenge, he knew the clan would not rest until they tested him. He stood, brushing the dust from his clothes, and looked around. He had no armor, no weapon, no preparation. All he had was himself. The woman stood too, though she still moved with weakness from her near drowning. She came close to him, her eyes serious. "Listen, when they speak, do not look down. Do not bend. If you show fear, they will take it as weakness. And when the challenge comes, fight smart, not strong. They are stronger than you, but not wiser." Her voice trembled, but her words gave him courage. He nodded and followed her outside. The whole clan had gathered in a wide circle. Fires burned in pits, sending smoke into the sky. At the center of the circle was a stone platform. The elder stood there, tall and still, his robes glowing faintly with strange patterns. Around him, warriors lined up, their armor shining, their eyes sharp and filled with suspicion. The human and the woman were pushed gently toward the center. The drums stopped. The silence that followed was louder than any sound. The elder lifted his hands and began to speak in the deep, rolling voice that carried across the entire camp. The words were foreign, but the weight of them was clear. He was declaring the law, calling upon the ancestors, reminding everyone of their traditions. Then the elder turned his eyes on the human, his long arms stretched out, pointing at him. The elder's voice thundered, ending with the same words the human had already heard before. "Sacred law," the crowd murmured. Some bowed their heads, others only glared. The woman leaned toward him, whispering quickly, "This is the moment. They will bind us with words. They will make you mine, and me yours. If you accept, no one can break it, not even me. But someone will try to fight." The human swallowed hard. He stood tall as the elder raised a carved staff and drew strange symbols in the air. The people chanted, their voices blending into a haunting rhythm. Then, suddenly, the chant broke when a warrior stepped forward. It was the same man who had shouted at him the night before, the broad-shouldered fighter with scars across his face. He slammed his fist against his chest and roared something in their language. The meaning was clear even without words, a challenge. The elder did not protest. Instead, he lowered his staff, as if this had been expected. The crowd cheered, their voices rising like the roar of beasts. The woman grabbed the human's wrist tightly. He claims you cannot protect me. He challenges you for the right. If you win, you stay. If you lose, you die. The human's stomach dropped. This was it. There was no choice, no running away. He stepped forward, his boots scraping the stone. The warrior opposite him was huge, with arms like tree trunks and eyes full of fire. He carried no weapon, only his body, but that body looked like it could crush bones with a single blow. The elder raised his staff high, then slammed it down. The fight began. The warrior lunged first, moving faster than the human expected. A fist swung like a hammer toward his head. He ducked, barely avoiding it, feeling the air rush past his ear. He stumbled back, then regained his balance. The crowd shouted, some cheering, some mocking. The human's mind raced. He could not match this alien in raw strength. One wrong move, and he would be broken. He had to think differently. The warrior charged again, fists flying. This time, the human sidestepped, letting the warrior's own speed carry him forward. The alien stumbled slightly, surprised. The human used that moment to land a quick punch to the side of his ribs. It was not strong, but it made the warrior grunt. The crowd gasped. The human felt a spark of hope. But the warrior only grew angrier. With a roar, he rushed again, grabbing the human by the shirt and lifting him off the ground. The world spun as the human was thrown across the platform, landing hard on the stone. Pain shot through his back, but he forced himself to roll aside just in time to avoid a crushing stomp. His body screamed with pain, but his mind stayed sharp. He remembered the woman's words, "Fight smart, not strong." He forced himself up, panting, and watched the warrior's movements carefully. The alien attacked again, throwing wild but powerful blows. The human dodged left, ducked right, barely staying alive. Then he saw it. The warrior left his leg exposed every time he swung. The human waited, then at the right moment, kicked hard at the alien's knee. The warrior roared in pain, stumbling. The human used the chance to jump forward, slamming his elbow into the alien's jaw. The warrior staggered, his balance broken. The crowd erupted in shouts. Some cried for the human, others screamed for their own. The fight had turned. The warrior, furious, lunged one last time, but the human twisted aside and used the alien's momentum against him. He shoved, sending the warrior crashing to the ground. Dust rose around them. The human stood over him, chest heaving, fists clenched. He could finish it, but he did not. Instead, he stepped back, letting the warrior breathe. The message was clear. He had won, but he would not kill. The elder slammed his staff down again, declaring the fight over. The crowd went silent for a heartbeat, then roared louder than before. Some were angry, some were shocked, but no one could deny the truth. The human had won. The woman rushed to his side, her eyes wide with relief and awe. She whispered, "By victory and by law, they cannot take me from you now." The human stood tall, though his body shook from exhaustion. He had survived the challenge. He had proved himself. But as he looked at the furious eyes still watching him, he knew the fight was far from over. The ceremony had bound him to her, but it had also bound him to a world that would never see him as one of their own. The warrior lay on the ground, breathing heavily, his pride broken in front of the entire clan. The human stood tall, though his body ached from the fight, every muscle burning like fire. Sweat and dust covered him, but his eyes were steady. He had not only survived the challenge, he had won it. The crowd's roar filled the air, some voices angry, others shocked, and a few voices even carried something like respect. The elder stepped forward, his glowing staff raised high. He spoke in his deep voice, words that shook the silence, and though the human did not understand the language, the meaning was clear. The law had spoken through combat, and the law could not be denied. The human had claimed victory. By tradition, by sacred law, the alien woman was his. She stepped closer to him, her body trembling, her face pale with emotion. When her eyes met his, there was something new there, something that had not been there before. She looked at him not just with fear or duty, but with recognition. He had risked everything and proved himself before all of her people. For the first time, she whispered to him, "You are strong, not only in body, but in heart." The warriors around them shifted uncomfortably. Many of them were not ready to accept an outsider. Their jaws tightened, their fists clenched, but the elder's voice kept them still. No one could deny the truth of what they had seen. The defeated warrior got back to his feet, his pride shattered. He looked at the human with rage in his eyes, but he could not challenge again. The law allowed only one fight. He spat on the ground and walked away, his shame clear for all to see. Some warriors followed him, muttering darkly, but none dared step forward now. The human stood quietly, his chest still rising and falling with the effort of battle. Inside, he was exhausted, but he did not let it show. He knew weakness now would destroy what he had earned. He stood straight, his head high, and let the silence of victory settle. The elder lowered his staff, then spoke again. His words were like a judgment, final and unbreakable. The woman translated softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "By victory and by law, you are bound to me. I am yours, and you are mine." Her words carried both relief and sadness. Relief because he had saved her life twice now, once from the river, once from the challenge. Sadness because the chain of law was still heavy between them. It was not a bond of choice, but of tradition. The crowd began to disperse, though many cast long, burning looks at the human. Some were filled with anger, some with confusion, and a few with quiet wonder. Children whispered to each other, their eyes wide, pointing at the stranger who had done the impossible. Mothers pulled them close, warning them to be silent. The camp carried the weight of change, and change was something they feared. The woman touched his arm gently, guiding him away from the platform. They walked together through the circle of eyes, every step heavy with tension. When they reached the edge of the camp, she whispered again, "You should rest. They will not challenge again today. But be careful. Some do not forgive easily." He nodded, his mind racing. He had fought and won, but he knew she was right. Victory was not the end. It was only the beginning of a longer battle, one not with fists, but with trust, with hearts, with the weight of being an outsider in a world bound by law. Inside the hut, the silence felt heavy. The woman sat across from him, her eyes fixed on the fire. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. "I did not believe you could win. I thought they would kill you." He gave a small, tired smile. "So did I," he admitted. His honesty made her look up, her lips curving into the faintest smile. It was the first time he had seen warmth in her eyes. "You fight different," she said softly. "Not like my people. You are smaller, weaker, but you use the mind. You wait. You turn their strength against them. That is why you won." Her words carried admiration, but also a kind of fear. If he could defeat someone stronger by thinking differently, what else could he do? He could see that question in her eyes, but he also saw the beginning of something else, trust. The human leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. His body begged for rest, but his thoughts would not stop. He had proved himself once, but what about tomorrow? What about the next day? Would he always be forced to fight for his place? He opened his eyes again and looked at her. "What happens now?" She hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Now, you are part of me. You will live among us. You will eat with us, walk with us, share my shelter. By law, no one can take me from you. Not even I can walk away." But she lowered her eyes. "It will not be easy. They do not want you here." Her honesty struck him harder than any blade. He had won the right to stay, but not the right to belong. He was still a stranger, a shadow in their world. The fire crackled between them, throwing soft light on her face. She looked younger in that moment, fragile in a way he had not seen before. "Thank you," she whispered suddenly. "Not for the law, not for the fight, but for not letting me drown. No one else would have jumped, only you." Her words touched something deep inside him. He realized then that whatever this bond was, whatever chain the law had wrapped around them, it had started with a simple truth. He could not watch her die. And maybe, just maybe, she saw that too. Outside, the night was restless. The wind carried the whispers of warriors who still doubted, who still burned with anger. But inside the hut, for the first time, there was a fragile peace. The human closed his eyes, knowing tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, he had survived. Tonight, he had proved that even a stranger, even someone weaker, could stand tall against a world that wanted him gone. And though he did not say it out loud, a thought echoed in his mind. This was no longer just survival. It was the start of something greater, something that even their sacred law could not fully control. The days after the challenge were not peaceful. The human had won, but winning did not mean acceptance. Everywhere he walked in the camp, eyes followed him. Some were filled with hatred, some with fear, and a few with silent curiosity. No one spoke kindly to him. No one offered him food or water unless the woman herself gave it. He was still an outsider, no matter what the law said. The alien woman stayed close to him. At first, it seemed like duty because the law forced her to remain by his side. But slowly, the human began to notice small changes in her behavior. She no longer looked at him with suspicion. Her eyes softened when she watched him work. Her voice grew calmer when she translated the clan's words for him. She still carried the weight of tradition, but she began to trust him, little by little. One evening, they sat outside their hut, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. The sky turned red and gold, and the air grew cooler. The human broke the silence. "Why do they hate me so much?" he asked. The woman was quiet for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "Because you are not one of us. To them, I was a symbol, sacred and untouchable. You broke that. You touched me. You claimed me, even if you did not want to. Now, they see their honor broken, and they will not forget." Her words cut deep, but he nodded. He had known from the start this would not be easy. Still, he could not ignore the flicker of warmth in her voice, as if she herself no longer saw him as a thief of her honor, but as something else. Later that night, as the fire inside the hut glowed softly, she began to share more. "I was never free," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Even before you came, they called me sacred, but it was only another kind of prison. I was theirs, not my own. Every step I took, every word I spoke, was judged. When I fell in the river that day, part of me thought, maybe it was the end. Maybe it was escape." Her confession surprised him. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the pain behind her glowing eyes. She had been trapped long before he arrived. The law had chained her, but not with ropes or iron, with expectation. He realized then that saving her had not only pulled her from the water, it had pulled her from a cage she had never been able to escape. He leaned closer, his voice gentle. "You're not a prisoner to me. You don't belong to me. Not really. I don't care what their law says." She stared at him, her lips parting slightly. "But the law is everything," she whispered. "Not to me," he replied firmly. "I don't need a law to tell me who you are. I see you. That's enough." Her eyes filled with something he had not seen before, hope. For a moment, the chains of tradition seemed to loosen around her, even if only inside her heart. But their fragile peace did not last. The next day, a messenger arrived from a nearby clan. The human could not understand the words, but he could see the tension on the faces of the warriors who listened. The woman explained later, her voice heavy. "Other clans hear of you now. They hear that an outsider has claimed one of us. They are angry. They think our clan is weak. They may come." The human felt the weight of her words. His presence was not only a problem here, but a spark that could ignite a larger fire. Still, he refused to back down. "Let them come," he said quietly. "I didn't ask for this, but I won't run from it." That night, the woman watched him as he fixed the broken edge of their hut, his hands working with quiet determination. She asked suddenly, "Why did you save me? You could have walked away. The river would have taken me, and no one would blame you. Why did you jump?" He paused, thinking. The answer was simple, yet it carried the weight of who he was. "Because I couldn't stand and watch someone die. Not if I could help." She studied him, as if trying to understand a kind of strength her people did not know. "My people think strength is in muscle, in war, in blood," she said softly. "But you are different. You fight with something else, something I cannot name." "Maybe it's just being human," he said with a small smile. Her lips curved into the faintest smile too, though it quickly faded as she lowered her gaze. "They will never forgive you, even if you save me again and again. But I—" She stopped, her voice catching. Then she whispered, "I will never forget what you did." The words warmed him more than the fire beside them. For the first time since he arrived, he felt less alone. But outside, the camp was restless. Warriors sharpened their blades. Mothers kept their children close. The clan knew storms were coming, storms of blood, of pride, of law. And at the center of it all stood one human and one alien woman, bound not only by tradition, but by something stronger slowly forming between them: trust. That night, as the wind howled and shadows moved outside their hut, the woman shifted closer to him, her voice almost too soft to hear. "If danger comes, I will stand with you, even against my own." He turned to her, his eyes steady. "And I'll stand with you, no matter what." In that moment, the bond between them changed. It was no longer only sacred law holding them together. It was choice. And choice was far stronger than chains. The night before the attack, the camp was uneasy. Fires burned low, warriors sharpened their blades, and the sound of whispers carried in the wind. The human could feel the tension like a weight pressing on his chest. He sat inside the hut with the alien woman, both of them silent, listening to the restless movements outside. She looked at him with worry in her glowing eyes. "They will come soon," she said softly. "Another clan, maybe many. They will want to test you, test us." He nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we'll fight. Together." When the first horns blew at dawn, the ground seemed to tremble. The human rushed outside and saw shadows moving at the edge of the forest. A rival clan had arrived. Their warriors were taller, stronger, and heavily armed. They carried banners that glowed with strange symbols, and their eyes burned with anger. To them, this was more than a visit. It was a demand for blood. The elder of his woman's clan stepped forward, speaking words of diplomacy, but the rival warriors only laughed. Their leader, a massive alien with scars across his face, pointed at the human with contempt. The human could not understand his speech, but the woman translated in a whisper. "He says you are a thief of honor. He says no outsider can take what belongs to our people. He demands you give me up." The human's stomach twisted. He looked at her, then at the hostile warriors, and shook his head. "No, never." The rival leader roared in fury, his voice shaking the trees. His warriors advanced, and the battle began. The human grabbed a wooden spear, the only weapon left near the huts. Around him, chaos exploded. Warriors clashed, steel rang against steel, and screams filled the air. The human fought with everything he had, striking, dodging, using his smaller size to move quickly between the giants. His arms burned, his chest ached, but he refused to fall. Each time he thought he could not continue, he remembered her face. The woman who had once whispered that she belonged to him by law, but now stayed because she chose to. She was beside him, fighting too. Though weaker from her near drowning, she used her speed and sharp movements to protect his side. Together, they became something neither clan expected. Where he faltered, she stepped in. Where she stumbled, his hand pulled her back. Their bond turned into strength, and for a brief moment, they fought as one. The rival leader broke through the fight and came straight for them. He towered over the human, his blade glowing with strange energy. The human's hands shook, but he lifted his spear and stood his ground. The woman moved in front of him, spreading her arms wide. "No!" she cried in her own tongue. "You must kill me first." Her words silenced the field for a heartbeat. Even the rival leader froze, surprised. She turned her head and looked back at the human, her eyes fierce. "I belong to him," she shouted, louder than she had ever spoken. "Not because of law, but because I choose." The human felt something ignite inside him. Her courage gave him strength. With a roar, he lunged forward, knocking her gently aside, and met the rival leader head-on. The fight was brutal. The leader's strength was overwhelming, each strike of his blade shaking the human's arms. But the human remembered every lesson of survival, every moment of struggle. He ducked under a swing, rolled across the dirt, and thrust his spear upward with all his force. The weapon struck true. The rival leader stumbled back, roaring in pain. The human pressed forward, using speed instead of strength, striking again and again until the giant crashed to the ground. Dust rose into the air, silence spreading across the battlefield. The rival clans stared in disbelief. Their leader had fallen to a human, an outsider they had mocked. No one moved. The human stood there, chest heaving, his hands shaking, but his eyes unbroken. He had proven himself not just to one clan, but to all who had witnessed. Slowly, the elder of his woman's clan stepped forward, his voice echoing. The words were long and heavy, but the meaning was clear. He declared the human victorious, bound not only by law, but by choice and by strength. The rival clan, shamed, carried their wounded leader away. The battle was over. The human turned, searching for her. She was standing a few feet away, her face pale, her body trembling, but her eyes filled with pride. She stepped closer, placing her hand gently on his arm. "You fought for me," she whispered. "Not because of law, because of us." He met her gaze, exhausted but smiling faintly. "I told you, I won't let you go." The camp, once filled with doubt, now looked at him differently. Some still carried anger, but others saw him with respect, even awe. Children whispered that he was more than an outsider. He was a warrior, a protector, a man who had changed the law itself by giving it new meaning. That night, the fires burned bright in celebration, though not everyone joined in. The human and the woman sat together in silence, the sounds of the clan around them. She leaned against him, her voice quiet but certain. "From this day, I am yours, not because I must be, but because I want to be." For the first time, the human felt the chains of sacred law break. What bound them now was stronger than any tradition. It was trust, courage, and the choice they had both made. As the stars lit up the sky above, he realized something deeper. He had come here as a stranger, a man with no place among them. But now, standing with her, he was not alone. He belonged, not to the clan, not to the law, but to her. And that was enough.